Welcome, everyone, to this evening's program, A Holistic Nutritional Approach to Black Mental Wellness. We would like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Ruby Lathan, PhD. Dr. Ruby Lathan is a certified holistic nutritionist and inspires with a powerful story of recovering from thyroid cancer through alternative treatment focused on a whole food plant based diet. Dr. Lathan is featured in the hit documentary What the Health and is also featured in an upcoming documentary. Dr. Lathan worked as a researcher and an award winning engineer and now teaches others how to re engineer their health and live disease free. That being said, I would like to introduce everyone to Dr. Ruby Lathan.
Good evening. Good evening. So I'm happy to be with you all tonight. I think this is a great topic that we really should cover more often. So I'm gonna jump right in. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'll take that as a yes. So, okay. All right, great. So I'm gonna share my screen so we can jump right into the topic. Just looking for, okay. All right, got it. All right, there. Okay. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. I'll just go from there. So when we're talking about, great, perfect. We're talking about mental health. There are a lot of things to consider. And one of the things we often overlook is our diet. And diet has a very powerful effect on our mental health. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight and how we can use that to improve our overall health. So a little bit about me. I appreciate the introduction, but I will just cover a little bit more. So I am a certified holistic nutritionist, as well as a vegan chef and speaker and health educator. And everything that I do is really centered around helping people live their best and healthiest life. And one of the ways that I got into this field was through my own journey dealing with serious health issues when I was diagnosed with cancer back in 2007. And from that experience, I decided that I really wanted to use a natural approach to heal myself. So I started researching, and it became very clear and evident that diet would be the first place to start. So I switched my diet to a plant-based diet. I started doing more research on how to heal the body naturally. And there are a lot of ways to heal. In addition to the food, it's also our mindset. It's also stress reduction, which was a major factor for me, being my first career as an engineer. My degrees are in engineering, and I was working in defense, but I didn't like it at all. And I wanted a way out, and I was stressed. And when I got this diagnosis of thyroid cancer, I decided I was already looking for a way out of this career choice. And I felt really guilty because I was like, I spent a lot of time getting a master's and PhD in engineering, and I actually just don't want to do it anymore. But I was trying to figure out, how do I get out of this job? How do I get on to the next thing? And then the cancer popped up, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to quit. This is my opportunity to get out of everything, and nobody's going to question me, and I'm just going to do what I need to do to heal. So I just took some time off, and really focused in on the issues that I needed to address, the issues surrounding health. So one, we know was stress. Two, diet was another very big part of it. But three, it was something that we look at when we look at alternative medicine, particularly in Ayurvedic medicine, where they pay more attention into not just the illness, but where you get sick. Because sometimes our organs are representative of certain things in our lives, whether it's our heart or, our spleen or whatever. And so mine was the thyroid, and the thyroid is very small, but it wraps around the vocal cord. And mine was enlarged. And if it gets too large, it can cut off your vocal cord where where you can be hoarse or not speak at all. And so I said, I'm thinking that's a sign, in addition to there being cancer there, that the person I was working with, like, perhaps you need to learn how to speak up more, speak out, use your voice, because what's happening, what's manifesting in your body is a sign. Usually what's going on the inside is what's happening on the outside. And so they're very well connected. So I started using my voice more. I started saying no more. I started just doing what I wanted to do and not what I felt like I had to do. And that was a big part of the healing process. I started visualizing healing every day. I have a mental session, seeing the cancer leave my body. And I started feeling like I was healing myself. And long story short, after about a year, which I had given myself, of the dietary changes, the supplements that I had researched, being outside, meditating, visualizing, the cancer was gone a year later with just those things, no chemo or radiation or surgery, nothing traditional. It was all what I put on my plate, what I put in my body, and the way that I thought about life. And that is not something that's unique to me. This is something I teach that other people can do too. We all have that same power in our body. If we can manifest an illness, then we can manifest health. And usually we have to deal with the issues though. We have to deal with the issues like, why are you a people pleaser? Why do you feel like you need everybody else's validation? Why? And those type of things. And when you kind of peel the layers back, you can start finding the healing. And so a lot of us, most of us, I would say, probably need some level of therapy because we have been through a lot. And even if you had a relatively great childhood, parenting was different when I was growing up, and a lot of things are not helpful and can leave scars. And if we don't deal with those things, then we kind of carry them and just say, "Oh, this is my personality. I'm just sensitive." But no, you're probably sensitive because of something that happened. And so we want to start peeling back those layers and getting the help that we need. And the other thing is that when we're dealing with Black mental health, there's a lot of data that shows, particularly Black women and men as well, but especially women, carry more stress and fear and just in our bodies. And I would say that's probably just because of the country that we live in, as being a Black person, that we know how things go. We know that there's unfair policing and rules and things like that. And we don't go unscathed. Simply knowing that you're part of a quote minority group that is sometimes targeted puts unknown stress on your body. And so we have to be aware of these things, the things that we're reading. And when we watch the deaths of people at the hands of police, we start internalizing some of those things and carrying that stress and that fear. And so we don't need to turn a blind eye, but we have to guard our minds so that we're not carrying the stress, which then tears down our health. And knowing that we get to live full, healthy, happy lives just like everybody else, but being aware that subconsciously, when you hear the negatives about, quote, this minority group, you start carrying that. And that starts to manifest in the health outcomes that we see for African Americans. And a lot of those health outcomes aren't, oh, we have higher blood pressure or more weight just because we're Black. we have those things because we're carrying more stress, which then manifests as excess weight and heart disease and all these other things. So there's a lot we can do about it, though. The first thing is awareness that of the world that we live in and how it affects us, because you can't take in things and not be affected by them if you don't process them. So that's number one. So after I was healed, I decided to just change my career and do what I wanted to do, and that was helping people find an alternative way to heal, a natural way to heal, and to live happier, healthy lives. And as part of that, I had to learn how to cook again, so to make it taste good. So I became the vegan chef and teach cooking classes as well. So let's talk a little bit about the brain. The brain is less than 2% of our body weight, but it burns 20 to 25% of the body's fuel, meaning that it is busy, it is at work all the time. So we really have to find ways to give it a break, because we take it for granted because the brain is just go, 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 doesn't complain, it just does its job. But it is using up a lot of energy. So when you're working all day, making decisions all day, you are going to be tired because that brain power uses calories, it uses energy, and it is part of our daily process. So we have to find ways to refuel and to let it relax. In addition to obviously sleeping and getting enough hours of sleep a night, we want to look into things like meditation, which really helps refuel the brain and helps it relax, and really where you can kind of more get in touch with your inner voice, your intuition, and you're able to block out all of the noise that we're listening to on a regular basis. So meditation is one of the most simple, free things that you can do and the most powerful. So fortunately, it is free. One of the most powerful things you can do to help your mental health is to take 20 minutes a day, preferably in the morning when you first get up or right before bed, especially if you're someone who has insomnia, can't, sleep or you wake up in the middle of the night. The best thing you could do is to do a 15 to 20-minute meditation and fall back asleep by calming your brain. So, but let's talk a little bit about the gut-brain axis. So nothing we do happens in a vacuum. Our entire body is connected. So anytime we eat something, that affects our brain. So the brain affects the gut by its nutrient delivery, telling the body what to do with those nutrients, by the microbial balance that it's trying to achieve. And then the gut sends back information that influences the neurotransmitter that says, I'm stressed, or it affects our mood and behavior. So these two things are highly connected, the brain and the gut. So when you eat something, and we'll talk about it more on the next slide, that feeds the brain, you're going to have a different, happier outcome versus something that is detrimental to the brain, you're going to have a different outcome. So about 95% of the body's serotonin, and we know serotonin is one of the mood stabilizers, right? That's produced in the gut. So if we're not eating a diet that is rich in promoting the growth of that serotonin supply, then we're going to have some negative outcomes like depression and things like that. And then we talked about stress. Stress suppresses good gut bacteria, right? So when you're highly stressed, we usually crave high fat, high salt, high sugar foods because we want to feel better, because it gives a dopamine rush, but then that causes a gut imbalance, which then makes you not feel so good. And then you want to go back for more of that. So it's just a cycle of going up and down, trying to feel better, but using the wrong foods to do that. So there's a way that you can interrupt a negative cycle instead of, choosing the high fat, high sugar, high salt things, which is like the trifecta of like, it's like such a boost to your system which is why having something sweet and salty, like I've seen sandwiches where the bread is donuts and the inside is like sausage and cheese, and it's like that. When your body gets that, your brain just lights off so many dopamine receptors, like OMG, this is like and so then you're going to want to do that again and again, but what it's doing to your gut is not a good thing. And so eventually it has a negative effect on you. So we have to understand the brain gut axis, that what we eat definitely and directly affects our mood and behavior. So these two types of food produce different gut bacteria. And I guess you can probably guess which one produces a happier outcome, a more stable mood, a more positive outlook, and which one would have the opposite effect. So as I mentioned, the high fat, high salt, high sugar, that is on this side of the page, that you'll find in processed foods and processed meats and things like that, is going to produce a gut bacteria that is highly imbalanced. And so it's going to start craving more of that. Whereas on the other side of the screen, you have fresh vegetables, you have whole grains, you have olives, avocados, healthy fats that are going to produce a more stable mood, a more stable blood sugar, which is actually going to give you a happier outcome in the long run. And then the balance in your gut is going to be a lot better. So I should take a poll. Which side of this plate do you think produces more serotonin? Since I can't hear you, I'm sure everybody's saying the side with the veggies. Now, we don't eat our veggies to look this boring. This is why I show you good, healthy recipes that make it taste really good. But the bottom line is we eat way too much saturated fat, cheese, milk, and meat, as opposed to things that feed the brain in a healthy way. And so we need to flip that script if we really want healthy mental health to go in the right direction. Same with this kind of food. The difference here is that food can cause inflammation, or it can cause healing properties. So the reason inflammation is such a big factor is that it is an issue with most disease development, that most disease has some element of inflammation, including depression and other forms of mental health issues. So when you're eating whole grains, when you're eating mushrooms, when you're eating fruits and veggies, that actually reduces the inflammation in your body versus the typical diet, which we call the standard American diet, which is the SAD diet, because that's what it stands for, standard American diet, is very sad because it makes you sad. It feels good going down, but it doesn't feel so good after the fact. And so this, with the burgers and colas and drinks like that, you're going to not only interrupt your gut balance, you are going to increase inflammation in the body, which causes poor mental health, but also sets you up for other diseases. So you want to think about, how do we take down inflammation in the body? So we want to focus on things like omega fatty acids, right? So we've heard of omega-3s. You've probably heard of that in passing, and most people think of omega-3s, they think of fish oil, and that because that has a high amount of omega-3. But fish get their omega-3 from eating algae. There's no inherent omega-3 in a fish. So they get it all from algae. So when you take fish oil or you eat fish, you get omega-3, you're getting it second or third hand, because sometimes the fish only has omega-3 because it ate a fish that ate algae. It didn't even eat the algae itself. It ate a fish that ate algae. And sometimes it's even further removed. It ate a fish that ate a fish that ate algae. And so you're getting it so far down the line when we could just eat the algae, or we could take omega-3 algae-based supplements, which have shown to be a lot more effective than, let's say, fish oil. So we don't have to we don't need the fish to be the middleman of getting our omega-3s. So we want to skip that step and go straight to the omega-3, which is an algae. And you can find this at any grocery, well, health food store, or you can find it online. An algae-based omega-3 is what you want, because that's going to help bring down inflammation in the body. And what happens is some people think, oh, I'm eating fish to, get the omega-3s. But if you fry the fish or if you cook it at very high temperatures, you're basically deactivating most of that omega-3 anyway. And then it becomes an inflammatory food, which kind of defeats the purpose of eating it in the first place. So there's something called C-reactive protein, which measures the amount of inflammation in the body. And these are blood tests that you can have done, and you can ask your doctor to have it done to see what your inflammation markers are, and then change your diet and retest and see how much that inflammatory marker has gone down. So you want to, and if you're not already taking notes, I would suggest you take some notes. So number one is going to be the omega-3, algae-based omega-3. Also, that you find that in things like spirulina, green powders, green vegetable powders. You're usually going to find sea vegetables that have the omega-3s in them. So there's more than one way to get it in. And in this study, and this is what the algae looks like. You don't have to eat it in this form, but this is what it looks like in the wild. And I know a lot of people have been hearing about, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, the seaweed that it was a big craze last year, which is great because people are eating more seaweed, and the name will come to me in a moment. But in this double-blind interventional study, it looked at the effects on older people and their brain function. And they showed a significant improvement in executive function after 6.5 months of supplementation with things like omega-3 based from algae. And they had less brain shrinkage as compared to the group that was in the placebo group that was given nothing. So especially as we age, we think things like dementia and Alzheimer's are just like a luck of the draw, who gets it or not, when it really is based on a number of things. One, what's our diet, our activity level, and our mental activity that we continue, like after we retire. Are we still using our brain to figure things out? Are we still learning new things after, we're not doing our daily task anymore? Are we walking daily? Because that has a huge effect on your overall brain health as well, and your gut health. And then what are we eating? Are we filling our brains with things that clog the arteries, or are we giving it things that bring down inflammation and actually stop brain shrinkage and improve executive function? And executive function happens in the front part of the brain, and that is the decision-making part of the brain. So when you have a better executive function, you make better life decisions, you make better daily decisions, and that's what tends to go when your brain function starts to decrease.
CMOS, was that what the word you were looking for?
Yes, that is the word. Thank you. Okay. Yes, everyone was doing their CMOS smoothies and shakes, and that's good, because that is a form where you can get good omega-3s and other things. So, yes. All right. So, following up with that, the omega-3 issue, there's something called cardiogenic dementia. And basically what it's talking about is that the same scenario that happens when you get heart disease, heart attack, is happening in the brain. And so they're kind of sometimes even call it diabetes of the brain, because it's the same issues of arteries and cells being clogged. So at the upper part of the screen, you'll see a clear and open heart valve. And then next to it, you will see a narrowing of that valve because of plaque that is starting to build up. And then you will see that now you're not going to get as much blood flow going through that valve. And then when that plaque adds up so much, not only does it make the valve stiffer, but then at some point, sometimes when a heart attack happens, it means the blood wasn't able to get through at all. The same thing is happening in the brain. So if you look at the screen at the top, it shows patients that do not have dementia. And you can see their arteries in the brain, which are very small, are clear, right? But at the bottom, with a patient with dementia, it is the exact opposite. Do you see this? That it's all clogged. It's all clogged. And what causes the clogging? It's what we eat. That's the only way that happens. So when you eat a diet that has anti-inflammatory foods, and we're eating fruits and vegetables as the main part of our diet, then you're not going to get that clogging. And if your brain is already starting to look like this, the good news is you can actually reverse it by changing your diet. So we don't have to sit here and just cross our fingers and hope we don't get dementia or Alzheimer's when we get older. We can actually set ourselves up to not get it by adopting a very healthy diet right now. So this is often what's happening that is not being talked about when we're dealing with
this. This is really good.
Great, I'm glad. This is what we're not talking about when we're talking about dementia, that we just think it's, just the luck of the draw, and it's not. And this needs to be discussed so much more. So whole grains, rice, and other whole grains have been showed to help prevent dementia. So there are a lot of studies that found that this is a very strong protectant. So brown rice, all the seeds, quinoa, any sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, all of those things, and beans, all of those great whole grains are very protective in keeping our bodies from developing these types of illnesses, specifically those related to dementia and Alzheimer's. So the more of these things you eat on a regular basis, the less likely you're going to be in that group. The other issue that they found in Alzheimer's patients was something called lutein, that they found that they had significantly less lutein in their blood, and a higher occurrence of macular degeneration. And that's where certain pigment gets destroyed. So we say, well, if they have less lutein, then what can we eat that has lutein? Surprise, surprise, it's green leafy vegetables have lots of lutein. So half a cup of kale has, for example, 50 times more lutein than an egg. And the benefit of eating kale over an egg is going to have a more saturated fat that you don't need, that can end up clogging things, whereas kale has no negative side effects. So you're going to get, not only that, kale actually helps build stronger bones because of the calcium that's in there. So another thing that we worry about when we get older are our bones weakening. But when we eat leafy greens, especially leafy greens with beans, then you actually build and keep more of the calcium in your bones. So it serves more than one purpose, which is the great thing. So if we're trying to make sure we have the right levels of lutein, then we want to be eating our leafy greens. So spinach, raw or cooked. And you can see how much more of the plant foods have lutein than an animal-based food. So we really want to focus in on those living foods, and they can be cooked or raw, which makes it very easy to get in a salad or in a smoothie or sauteed with garlic and beans. Very easy to do. We've got to change, let our taste buds change to start craving healthy food. So another study talked about, and the great thing about these studies, when you have a double-blind study, it kind of takes away a lot of the bias. So the average age of the participants in this study were 73, and they were given just a half cup cooked kale daily, or a full cup of spinach. And they saw that there were significant improvements in cognitive function compared to the placebo group. So it was significant, and meaning the difference was statistically significant. So just by a half a cup of cooked kale daily or a cup of spinach, you can actually change your cognitive function. So instead of focusing on what we can't eat, we want to focus on what we should eat. So we start crowding out the other junk with eating the things that are the best for us. Berries and the brain. So there are over about 4,000 kinds of polyphenols, which are really just plant nutrients in fruits and veggies. And that brain, that the research shows that they're very effective in the treatment of dementia, among other things. So we should know that especially blueberries and strawberries are really great for the brain. So we want to keep those on hand all the time. So you want to keep your frozen blueberries in the freezer, and or you can keep them fresh, but I always keep them frozen so you can have them anytime. Again, if you create a diet that includes these things, you're going to naturally be eating an anti-dementia Alzheimer's diet on a regular basis. So mood and fruit and veggies. So there was a study done in Great Britain that showed the relationship between daily servings of fruit and vegetables and happiness, which I think is a great study. And as you can imagine, the more fruits and veggies that they ate, the happier people were. People who ate up to 7 to 8 servings a day were the happiest and the most satisfied. And that is because, as I mentioned, the gut-brain axis, right? So in your gut, there are lots of bacteria, probiotics, prebiotics, and those are the healthy bacteria. There's some not so good bacteria, but they don't always go away. What we want is more of the good ones to keep the others in check. So there's a balance that's happening in our body every day. So when you eat natural fiber, because there's only fiber in plant foods, just period, no exceptions. There's only fiber in plant foods. There's no fiber in meat or dairy products. So you're only going to get your fiber from living plants or cooked plants. So when you eat things with fiber, it acts as the prebiotic for your gut, which allows the probiotics to grow. So basically you have your own little farm happening in your gut that is consistently replenishing the probiotics. But if you don't eat fiber and you eat a mostly refined flour, meat, and dairy diet, then you don't have the prebiotics. And so the probiotics only stay alive for like a very short time, because the prebiotics is like the soil and the probiotics are like the trees. And so prebiotics are going to come from like eating asparagus, eating pineapple, eating other things that just have grains, eating oats. That's like the soil. And then when you eat things like the fruits and all the other things, then it grows those probiotics. When you don't have that, the other bacteria overgrows and it takes over and literally sends signals to your brain to eat more junk because it's now in control. That is the little war that is happening in your gut on a regular basis. And that's why it feels so compulsive to want these foods, because when your gut bacteria is out of balance, literally those little microbes say, more sugar, more fat, more salt, McDonald's. That's what is happening in your body. But when you switch that off and you start every day, you're eating, smoothies, you're eating whole grains, you're eating dates, you're eating nuts, you're eating all this stuff, then the good guys are in charge and everything's calm. And then you can make normal decisions because it's sending gentle signals to say, yes, we're happy, more of this, more of this. It's not like the big bully, like the bad bacteria is. So that's what's happening in the brain. And then what also happens is when that bad bacteria is taken over and there's yeast overgrowth, then you start feeling depressed and you start feeling sad and you start feeling moody. And then you reach out for more of the things that are going to give you a boost of dopamine temporarily to feel better. And then it's just a bad cycle that you get in. So depression is very much affected by what we eat. It's also affected by not having enough vitamin D3. It's also affected by not having enough magnesium. And so those are things that we want to look to first when we're dealing with mental health issues, as opposed to, you know, a medication that doesn't actually fix the problem. But when we're looking at nutrient deficiencies, we're actually fixing the problem. So, and then there are other behavioral things we can do to help ourselves feel better too. So the most anti-inflammatory diet is a plant-based diet. It's plant-based diets cut the C-reactive protein levels by 30% within 2 weeks of eating a fully plant-based diet, which is a significant amount. And that's likely to do because of the high levels of antioxidants. Most of the antioxidants in our diet are found in the fruits and veggies. So when I was researching how to heal myself, I had no agenda. I was like, whatever I need to take, I'm going to take. And all of the research was pointing toward plant foods because of the high levels of antioxidants. Meat has some antioxidants, but primarily from the animal, from the plant foods that it ate. So you're getting it secondhand. Most of the antioxidants and healing properties are in the green leafy fruits and veggies, or in the parsley and you know, the basil and all those things that actually add a lot of flavor to food are very healing. So cutting your C-reactive protein by 30% in 2 weeks is huge. Imagine what happens after a month or 2 or 3 months or a year. You can completely change your body chemistry in a very short amount of time. So I want to make sure we leave enough time for questions. But if you're looking for recipes, all of this is plant-based food. At the top, we have walnut meat tacos. I make a meat out of walnuts, and you season it like with taco seasonings. Everybody loves it and cannot believe it's not actually meat. You have to be open-minded to learning how to cook again, because we've been taught to cook with fat as the primary flavor and animal meat as the primary function of what we're planning a meal around. And we have to flip that and making vegetables the center, treating those with respect, and seasoning those as much as we marinate, you know, our chicken and stuff overnight. Let's do some of that to the veggies and make them taste good. Like, do not serve me a plate of steamed cauliflower and zucchini. I'm like, come on, I like veggies, but I don't like them like that. And so they get a bad rap. So we have to learn how to respect our veggies, cook them well, and make them very good. And at the very bottom, I have a cashew banana cream pudding, which is very good. So leaving out the dairy. So I will open it up for Q&A right now. Excuse me.
Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question. Well, there's one question in the chat box. Is kefir part of the gut health issue?
Good question. Kefir is great, but not dairy-based kefir. So we want like a coconut kefir. It's full of probiotics. Sorry, got a little something in my throat. It's full of probiotics. So yes, kefir is good, but coconut-based or plant-based, not anything from a cow.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions?
How about yogurt? Because yogurt has healthy bacteria, but it's also dairy. So how do you, and I know there's almond, I guess there's non-dairy yogurt, right? There's almond-based yogurt and there's other types of yogurt, but Greek yogurt, what's your opinion?
Yes.
What's your
So
opinion on yogurt?
yes, yogurt is great if it comes from a plant. So
Okay.
it does have lots of probiotics in it. You want to go toward the more unsweetened yogurt and put your own fruit in it. So they have coconut Greek yogurt or cashew or almond or rice. There's tons. So I would go toward the unsweetened ones and add your own fruit to it to sweeten it up. But yeah, it's absolutely really great, but I would skip the dairy.
You said coconut based and what, rice based? What did you
Yeah,
say?
so they have yogurt made from rice milk, almond milk,
Okay,
cashew milk, or coconut, any of those,
okay.
and soy as well.
We have a question in the chat. Can you recommend an algae-based omega-3?
Yes, off the top of my head, there's one called Diva, DEVA. It's an algae-based omega-3, and that is one you could try. And if you just put in algae omega-3, you'll find others, but that's a good one.
Any more questions?
Oh, so how long have you been on a vegan diet? So you eat no meat at all?
Right.
Okay.
So I've been since 2007, since
Wow.
yeah. So it's been a while. It's been a while. So you really do have to just embrace a different way of cooking.
Yeah.
And some people just go overnight. And if you don't want to go fully plant-based, okay, but at least make the majority of your food plant-based food. Because generally we're eating like meat and dairy 3 times a day, which is causing inflammation 3 times a day. So some people start with like meatless Mondays or only doing meat at 1 meal a day, which is a great start, you know, and you can kind of ease into it so you can find more recipes that you like. I do have video on my YouTube channel where I teach you how to make the food. So just look me up on YouTube. All of it's on my website. If you go to my website, you'll see the links there. But tried and true recipes that people like and request. And if it's too bad you aren't in DC, because I have a food delivery service where you can order the food and it's delivered right to you every week with the recipes that I make and others. So so it's a great, because I got that request so many times. We're like, okay, these recipes are great, the videos are great, but can you cook the food? So I started a whole service with the chef and everybody who does that. So hopefully we will start shipping nationwide at some point, hopefully this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Bonnie asks, is this the diet that you would recommend for a breast cancer patient?
100%. Yes. Yes, I would recommend for anybody with cancer to cut the meat immediately and the dairy, because estrogen is a big factor in breast cancer, and you're only going to get estrogen or animal estrogen from meat and dairy. So cutting that cuts that down, which stops part of the fuel that food feeds cancer. But yes, and I have a cancer recovery course on my website. I also coach as well. But yes, I would highly recommend it. Along with the plant-based diet, you're going to need some supplementation to build your immune system up, to get back in charge, because we basically all have cancer cells floating in our body. Is our immune system up for the challenges of keeping it in check? And basically when it shows up, it means that our immune system was compromised long enough that it didn't keep it in check. So these foods boost your immune system.
School in the local community, and we are still just as white as the actual.
So great question. So there's a question about soy. So that's actually not correct about soy feeding cancer. So that's a big discussion. So we have 2 receptors for estrogen. One is our animal-based estrogen, and one is a phytoestrogen receptor, which is a plant estrogen. So soy has estrogen, as does chickpeas and flax seeds and all of that. However, the soy from the estrogen from soy is a plant estrogen. It's thousands of times weaker than an animal-based estrogen. Not only that, it helps block the uptake of animal estrogen in our bodies. So it's actually protective for breast cancer. people who eat more soy have less recurrence of breast cancer or instances of it in the first place. So soy is actually protective against breast cancer because a lot of people don't understand the different types of estrogen. So when you're drinking milk, for example, you're drinking the exact kind of estrogen that our body already has too much of. And so you're adding that. And the reason I say milk is because it's concentrated, and cheese as well. So you're taking a big gulp of estrogen that is the exact estrogen that's already in our body. So it acts the same way and then can feed cancer. When you eat drink a cup of soy milk, it is not animal-based estrogen. It's gonna go through the other receptor and at the same time block the uptake of excess estrogen from other parts of things that you're eating. So a big thing with cancer is, and estrogen is, number one, losing weight, because excess weight holds excess estrogen. So losing weight reduces your risk of cancers, all cancers, especially breast cancer, because fat cells store more estrogen, period. So that would be, one thing. Two, you do want to eat organic soy products because that's going to help block some of the estrogen uptake. And you also want to eat flax seeds and garbanzo beans, which are also plant sources of estrogen. The reason we don't hear about estrogen in chickpeas and flax is because the meat and dairy has a big lobby, and they have made people afraid of soy because soy is used so much to displace meat that they have villainized it, so people are confused about it, and because it's taking up their market share. But chickpeas aren't taking the market share for meat, and neither are flax seeds, so they don't say anything about that. And so they put out a lot of disinformation about soy and estrogen and use it to scare people away from it. Now, I don't recommend lots of processed soy. I recommend like tofu, tempeh, miso, natural forms of soy, the type of soy that they eat in, more Asian, facing countries. So, and organic. So great question.
Okay, so did that answer the last 3 questions in the chat box? Because it was all referring to estrogen, cancer, and soy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it did. I think it did. And so what I do recommend about soy is organic, as natural as possible. They have a lot of soy products coming on the market because veganism has become more popular. I say those are like splurge foods. They're better than eating meat, but they're very highly processed. So we want to minimize it. But if you're healthy and you're eating lots of fruits and veggies all the time, having a processed soy burger is not going to do you in, but it's not something you want to eat on a weekly or daily basis. So,
Okay.
great question.
We have a few more minutes. Were there any more questions? Just unmute yourself or type it in the chat box.
I
No more
hope that,
questions?
yeah. So I hope that people got a lot from this, and I'm always happy to come back and talk more on different topics and demos, all of that. I show people how to cook healthy food in an easy way. So if this is like your first, thinking about more plant-based foods, I would say just start trying some recipes and start crowding out the meat and dairy with healthier things. Like most people aren't drinking milk like that right now anyway, but if you are, just switch it to coconut milk or oat milk or almond milk or whatever, and you won't even notice the difference, but your body will. And then try some of the plant-based cheeses. They've gotten a lot better over the years. Switch those things out, or you can get more natural with it and make your own, like I do, like cashew cheese. So there are a lot of ways to do it. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing, because I know a lot of people get turned off like, oh, I can't go vegan. even if you don't, just stop eating so much meat and not at every meal, and cut it way back and like double or triple the amount of fruits and veggies you're eating on a regular basis. So that's the message. I would love it if everybody went plant-based, but if you don't, just eat more, because that's the healing properties are in the plant foods. So make it a regular part of your diet so that we are living healthier every day and not just hoping for when we get older, but you're going to start feeling better right now and avoid the dementia and all the other issues that come when things start adding up over the years.
How do you feel about taking probiotics orally?
I think it's great, especially if you're not consistent with eating lots of fruits and veggies regularly. And if you've had a bad diet for a while, or you've been on a course of antibiotics anytime in the last year, you should take probiotics to balance that out. So I do recommend probiotics orally, yeah, in addition to foods that have probiotics.
Okay.
This was great. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah,
You're
very
very
helpful.
welcome.
It was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, good. You're very welcome.
And don't forget that when you make the cashew cheese, you make your
Mhm.
meat-eating friends nuts. They just they go, no, this is cheese. No, you're nuts, and then they'll never believe you. But I like just torturing them with it, and I also want to stand up for steamed cauliflower. I love it. I put a little bit of seasoning on it, and I pretend that it's mashed potatoes, and I get a great deal of joy out of it. But I would not recommend serving it to people. That
Right.
doesn't work. But if you want to flip tofu over on them, you just make the drinks stronger. And you make sure you have a piece of fruit and a paper umbrella. You can make anybody eat tofu.
That's true. I usually don't start with it though. Yes, that's a good point. But it's all about the seasoning and the flavor. And once you learn how to season plant-based foods, even tofu will taste good.
Mhm.
So, yes. So,
I guess that's my issue, seasoning.
seasoning is it. And that's why check out my videos and my recipes. Because once you get the seasoning down, the tamaris, the miso, using those as seasoning, you can run with it. But usually most unsavory vegan food is because people don't know how to season it.
Okay.
So I would also just say sign up for my newsletter. You can go to my website. I send it out about monthly, just tips and things that are upcoming. So you can go there if you want to stay in touch.
Well, thank you so much. I would love for you to come back.
I'd be
and do
happy
another
to.
talk. We definitely will
Absolutely.
keep in touch. And I would
Okay.
love to have you here in person, but we'll see if we can make that happen.
Well, I love Chicago, so yeah.
Oh, great.
So, okay. Well,
There's
thank you,
any-
everybody, and I hope you
Thank
have
you.
a wonderful weekend.
Thanks,
You
you
too.
too.
Thank you.
so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.